In October of 2017, the world caught its first glimpse of something extraordinary. A faint speck of light, captured by the Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii, moving faster than anything bound to the sun. Astronomers gave it a simple, factual designation: the first interstellar object, Oumuamua. For weeks, telescopes across the globe strained to follow it as it slipped through our skies, racing on a path that no planet, no asteroid, no comet of our own solar system had ever taken. Oumuamua left more questions than answers. It was unlike anything we had ever seen. Its brightness changed dramatically, suggesting it was elongated, perhaps cigar-shaped, perhaps flat like a pancake. It showed no clear tail of dust or gas, yet it moved as though something invisible was pushing against it. Radiation pressure, outgassing too faint to see, or something else entirely. What struck astronomers most was the timing. How many such interstellar wanderers must have passed unseen before this one happened to cross our gaze? The fact that we saw it at all felt improbable. For the first time, humanity was forced to admit the space between the stars is not empty. It sends visitors, and we had just noticed one. 2 years later, in 2019, another traveller appeared, the second interstellar object, Borisov. Discovered by amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov through a handmade telescope, it looked more familiar. Jets of gas, a halo of dust, a streaming tail, everything we associate with comets. And yet, Borisov's speed told the true story. It came not from the Oort cloud or the Kuiper belt, but from beyond. It was a piece of another star system, crossing ours on its own immense journey. Unlike Oumuamua, which left confusion in its wake, Borisov offered comfort. It behaved like something natural, something we could understand. But comfort can be misleading. The cosmos rarely gives us easy answers. 2 interstellar visitors in such a short span of time suggested a truth we hadn't fully considered. These objects may not be rare at all. They may be passing constantly, slipping by undetected, and we had only just begun to notice. Years later came the third. This object dwarfed the first 2, 11 kilometers across, more massive than the asteroid believed to have ended the age of the dinosaurs. It was catalogued by the ATLAS survey and given its name, the third interstellar object, 3I Atlas. Unlike Oumuamua, it was not fleetingly small. Unlike Borisov, it did not glow with the familiar signs of a comet. 3I Atlas moved like a phantom through the dark, steady, silent, deliberate. Its path through the solar system cut with precision, as though it had been plotted long before we ever turned our telescopes toward it. And then came the unease, the suspicion, the realization that perhaps this was not random at all. Our telescopes scan constantly. They sweep the sky for rocks that might pose a threat, for fragments drifting toward Earth. But the truth is, space is vast, and our eyes are small. Billions of objects pass unnoticed. The majority are too faint, too dark, or too distant to ever reveal themselves. 3I Atlas should have been one of them. By every probability, it should have slipped through the void unseen, just another wanderer on an endless journey. And yet, somehow, we saw it. Somehow, it revealed itself. The detection felt less like chance and more like a breach, as though something meant to remain hidden had stepped, just slightly into the light. Imagine walking through a forest at night. Most of the animals move silently, keeping to the shadows. You never notice them, but suddenly one pauses in the moonlight just long enough for you to glimpse its outline. You were never supposed to see it, but you did, and now you cannot forget. That is what 3I Atlas represents. Not just an interstellar traveller, but a mistake. A moment when something beyond our world came too close to our perception. Oumuamua was strange, Borisov was familiar. But 3I Atlas was unsettling because it combined both qualities. It was massive, structured, and stable, qualities of a deliberate object. Yet it offered no simple explanation, no outgassing jets or cometary coma to comfort us. It was, in the words of more than one astronomer, wrong. Wrong in its brightness, wrong in its trajectory, wrong in its very existence as a discoverable object. For every interstellar wanderer we do not see, why did we see this one? Was its path an accident? Or was it designed to pass just close enough, just bright enough to be noticed? Human history is full of stories about watchers. From ancient myths of gods observing mankind to modern parables of hidden surveillance, we have always sensed that the act of being seen carries weight. To observe is to study. To study is to record. To record is to act with purpose. 3i Atlas raises the same question. Are we the watchers, or are we the ones being watched? The thought unsettles because it shifts the balance. We like to imagine ourselves as discoverers, the first to find, the first to name, the first to classify. But what if this discovery was not ours at all? What if the moment of observation was mutual? When astronomers reviewed the data, they struggled to reconcile it. The detection systems were designed for near-Earth asteroids. The odds of catching something from deep interstellar space, especially one this large and dark, felt vanishingly small. The comparison is stark. Imagine casting a net into the ocean, not to catch whales, but tiny fish. And yet, somehow, a leviathan swims into your net. Massive, undeniable, impossible to ignore. You would ask yourself, was that luck, or was it design? The unsettling answer is that 3i Atlas may never have been meant to be detected. Its path, its nature, its scale, all suggest it should have remained in silence. And yet, here we are, speaking its name, tracing its path, wondering why. So we return to the uneasy truth. 3i Atlas was never meant to be found. And yet, it was. If the universe is silent, and the forest of stars is dark, then what does it mean when something steps briefly into the clearing? Was it a mistake? Was it deliberate? Or was it something more, an invitation, or perhaps a warning? Before we continue, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Do you believe these interstellar objects are nothing more than random wanderers drifting aimlessly across the galaxy? Or do you think their discovery, especially this one, carries meaning? Share your perspective. Because across time zones and continents, we are staring into the same sky, pondering the same impossible visitor. And so we end this first chapter with the unsettling thought that our discovery may not have been ours at all, that perhaps the true story is not about what we saw, but about what allowed itself to be seen. If 3i Atlas was never meant to be found, then what does its discovery say about us? And about what might come next? When the discovery of 3i Atlas was first announced, it felt like a singular event. Astronomers, journalists, and ordinary people who rarely glanced at the night sky suddenly found themselves talking about an 11-kilometre wide traveller that had crossed the solar system. The debates began immediately. Was it a comet, a fragment, or something stranger? For many, that one detection was enough to occupy the next decade of study. But the universe had other plans. Quietly, as the first discussions about 3i Atlas were still echoing across conferences and news reports, faint traces of another anomaly appeared. The signals were subtle, recorded not in dramatic flashes but in small repeated movements across survey images. At first, they looked like noise, the kind of fleeting imperfections that astronomers learn to ignore. Telescopes pick up cosmic rays, reflections, false positives. A single dot of light shifting between frames rarely means much, but this one kept returning. Night after night the track persisted, and slowly, as the points were connected, a new line was drawn against the tapestry of stars, a fresh path, a new visitor. The realization came gradually, but when it arrived it spread like electricity. Another interstellar object had entered the solar system. Not just another rock, not just another cometary fragment shaken loose from the Oort cloud, but something from the outside, moving with speeds too great for the sun to hold. The second signature in the dark. Its presence alone would have been remarkable. After all, for all of human history until 2017, we had not recognized a single confirmed interstellar object. Then came Oumuamua, then Borisov, and finally 3i Atlas. To see yet another in such a short span seemed almost unreasonable, as if the cosmic lottery had been rigged in our favor. But what made this object truly unsettling was not just that it existed, it was that its behavior mirrored 3i Atlas almost exactly. When its speed was measured, it matched. When its trajectory was calculated, it traced an entry angle eerily similar to that of the larger object. Even its reflective properties, the way sunlight bounced from its surface, carried the same strange fingerprint. It was smaller, yes, but unmistakably kin to the traveller that had already shaken our sense of cosmic order. Astronomers know how to explain chance. They are cautious people, trained to avoid exaggeration. For months after Oumuamua, many dismissed the idea of anything unusual. It's just a rock, they said. An unusual rock, but still a rock. With Borisov, comfort came easily because it behaved like a comet, streaming gas and dust like 1,000 others before it. But when 3I Atlas arrived, comfort evaporated, and when this second near-identical object appeared in its wake, even the cautious began to wonder if something deeper was at work. There is an old saying, once is chance, twice is design. Human beings are wired to search for patterns, to find meaning in repetition. On a beach, if a single message in a bottle washed ashore, you might marvel at the coincidence. But if another bottle appeared days later, crafted in the same style, sealed in the same way, you would no longer believe in accident. You would begin to suspect a sender. The second interstellar object was like that second bottle. Its very existence turned the improbable into the deliberate. The data were precise. This new traveller cut into the solar system on a course that was not random but resonant. It echoed the path of 3I Atlas. Not perfectly, but close enough that astronomers could overlay their orbits and see a pattern emerge. It was as if invisible hands had drawn parallel lines across the heavens, paths meant to converge not by chance, but by design. To imagine the scale of such precision, consider the vastness of interstellar space. The Milky Way is 100,000 light-years across. Our solar system, by comparison, is a pinprick. For two objects to arrive not just from that endless sea, but on near-matching courses, is like two arrows shot from opposite ends of a continent, landing within meters of each other on the same forest floor. The odds defy comfort, and then there was the timing. For centuries, perhaps for millennia, no such objects were recognized. Our ancestors watched the skies with naked eyes, with stone observatories, with the first telescopes of glass and brass, and yet none of them recorded what we now call interstellar visitors. In just a few short years, we have seen not one, not two, but four. And two of them, 3I Atlas and its smaller companion, resemble each other so closely they might as well be siblings. Some astronomers tried to dismiss the resemblance. Human minds, they said, are prone to illusion. We see faces in clouds, patterns in noise. The second object looked like 3I Atlas only because we wanted it to, but others disagreed. Numbers do not hallucinate. Trajectories do not imagine themselves into alignment. The similarities were not tricks of perception. They were written in orbital mechanics, in angles, in speeds, in mathematics that cares little for human imagination. The truth was harder to ignore. The two objects were not strangers. They were connected. That raised a troubling question. Connected how? Were they fragments of a larger parent body broken apart in some ancient collision and now arriving piece by piece? If so, then where were the other fragments? How many more would cross our path? Or were they part of a system placed deliberately like markers on a map or beacons on a coastline? If so, then who placed them? And why here, in this small corner of the galaxy? The more astronomers studied, the more unsettling the possibilities became. Their paths through the solar system did not simply intersect randomly. They brushed past points of interest. The inner planets, the asteroid belt, the orbits of our largest gas giants. As though, in passing, they were taking note, mapping, recording, observing. There is a principle in exploration that scouts are sent first. Naval fleets in the age of sail dispatched small, fast ships to chart coastlines before the main vessels followed. Armies sent riders ahead to test terrain before the columns arrived. Even today, spacecraft are sent as probes before humans attempt a landing. Always, the first arrivals are meant to gather information, to see, to measure, to report back. And so the analogy formed quickly in people's minds. If 3I Atlas was a scout, what then was this second arrival? A confirmation, a relay, a message sent in duplicate to ensure delivery, or perhaps the beginning of something more systematic, a pattern of arrivals, each one placed where it could not be ignored. The deeper you look, the more the pattern reveals itself. For decades, the universe appeared silent, the forest of stars quiet, no sign of other civilizations. Then, in rapid succession, we saw 4 interstellar objects, and among them, 2 that seemed to belong together. If silence is safety, then what is repetition? The reflection is difficult to escape. If 3i Atlas was never meant to be found, what does it mean that we have now found 2? If one mistake is forgivable, what is 2? At what point does an accident become a signal? The analogy of a lighthouse comes to mind. Imagine you are sailing across a dark ocean, no lights anywhere. Then suddenly, far in the distance, a beam flashes. You're not sure if it was for you or for someone else, but you saw it. You record it. And then, another flash. Not in the same place, but close. 2 beams, 2 signals. You no longer believe in coincidence. You know there is structure in the dark. Someone, somewhere, is watching. That is what this second interstellar object represents. A flash in the silence. A pattern that cannot be ignored. And so the question lingers. If there is one, and then another, what comes next? Are we witnessing the opening moves of a larger design? Are these objects the first scouts of a fleet, the first markers of a map, the first notes in a long message? Or are they simply reminders that the universe is stranger than we imagine, that chance is less random than we think? Whatever the answer, the comfort of ignorance is gone. Once we have seen a pattern, we cannot unsee it. Once we have noticed repetition, silence no longer feels empty. It feels expectant, waiting. The second signature in the dark is not just another rock. It is a reminder that the forest we thought empty may be filled with watchers, that the sky we thought still may be alive with signals, that the discovery of one was not an accident, but a beginning. And if that is true, then we must prepare ourselves for what comes next. What do you think? Are we witnessing nothing more than chance? The rare coincidence of 2 interstellar travellers passing close enough for us to see? Or are we witnessing the slow unfolding of a pattern, too deliberate to ignore? Share your thoughts. Because across the world, under the same sky, we are staring at the same signs, wondering the same question. If the second signature has been found, how many more are already on their way? The arrival of the second object changed everything. What had once been dismissed as chance now began to look like intent. Astronomers are trained to see order in the heavens, to measure the precise motions of planets and comets, to trace arcs across the sky that repeat like music written into the fabric of time. And so, when they compared the orbits of 3i Atlas and its smaller companion, the unsettling truth emerged. Their paths were not strangers to each other. In the beginning, the data seemed incomplete, scattered across telescope arrays from Hawaii to Chile to space-based observatories that watched silently above our atmosphere. But as the measurements were gathered, the picture became clearer. Both objects had entered the solar system on trajectories that mirrored each other. Their speeds matched, their angles aligned with unnerving similarity. One could almost overlay their paths like transparent maps and see them tracing a pattern that stretched far beyond coincidence. Imagine standing beneath the night sky, watching a single arrow fly across the darkness. You might think it was chance, a stray shot loosed into the void. But then another follows, in the same arc, the same angle, as though guided by the same unseen hand. You would not think of randomness, you would think of design. That was the feeling settling over the scientific community. For decades, astronomers had mapped the orbits of asteroids and comets, tracing their loops and ellipses with precision. Those patterns obeyed gravity, the steady pull of the sun, the nudges of Jupiter, the subtle drag of radiation. But these new visitors seemed to obey something else. Their motions were too clean, too deliberate, as if their placement had been chosen. When plotted together, the 2 interstellar paths intersected the plane of the solar system in a way that drew lines across the orbits of the inner planets. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. Each world lay within observational reach as the objects passed. It was as though the travellers had been positioned not to avoid us, but to ensure we could not help but notice. For some, the comparison to mapping was irresistible. Ancient explorers carried sextants and compasses, marking coastlines and charting seas with care. Before great fleets sailed, scouts went ahead to measure depth, currents, and safe harbours. What if these 2 objects were doing the same, mapping not coastlines but planets, measuring not oceans but orbits? The analogy extended further. In the Age of Empires, beacon fires were lit on mountain ridges, each flame passing a signal to the next, creating a chain of light that could span hundreds of miles. Drums carried messages across jungles, mirrors flashed signals across deserts. What if these interstellar objects were part of such a chain, positioned to carry or reflect signals across the galaxy? 2 may only be the beginning of a pattern too large for us to yet grasp. The unnerving detail was the rhythm. Astronomers who studied the arrival times noted that the intervals between detections were not entirely irregular. Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019, 3I Atlas a few years later. And now this second, near twin. Each one seemed to appear not in the span of centuries but in years. The silence of deep time had fractured into a tempo, a pulse, as if the universe had shifted from stillness to whispering. The question was no longer whether these were accidents, but what message, if any, their placement conveyed. Some proposed triangulation, that 2 objects could form the basis of a larger geometric arrangement, like surveyors marking points on a map. Others wondered if they were relays, nodes of a network we could not yet perceive, like buoys left in an ocean, too vast for our understanding. History offers us uncomfortable parallels. When the first radio waves left Earth in the early 20th century, they spread outward at the speed of light, announcing our presence to the stars whether we intended it or not. For decades, scientists have debated the wisdom of sending deliberate messages, of broadcasting our location to unknown recipients. The cosmic forest theory warns against such actions. In a dark and silent forest, the creature that calls out risks being hunted. But what if we are not the first to call? What if the forest is already filled with signals, subtle and faint, carried not by waves but by objects? What if these visitors are the equivalent of radio beacons, planted not by accident but by civilizations long gone or still watching? The human mind resists such thoughts, and yet it cannot ignore them. The pattern across the sky demands interpretation. We are a species that has always looked upward and found meaning. Constellations woven from stars, gods written into their shapes, stories told through their alignments. We saw hunters, lions, ships, dragons. Now we see paths, arcs, convergences. We cannot help but wonder if someone else drew them first. As the second object moved through the solar system, astronomers noticed the same eerie precision that characterized 3I Atlas. Its tumbling was measured, its stability unnatural. No cometary jets pushed it off course, no random collisions diverted it. It passed cleanly, steadily, as though indifferent to the forces that buffet ordinary rocks. It was not just a visitor, it was a traveller with intent. And then there was the silence. No signals, no emissions, nothing detectable beyond reflected light. And yet silence can itself be a kind of pattern. When 2 objects arrive with the same silence, it is not absence. It is consistency. Repetition becomes its own message. The reflection is sobering. If these objects are scouts, what are they scouting for? If they are markers, what are they marking? If they're signals, who was meant to read them? Us, or someone else entirely? Consider the possibility that we were never the intended audience, that these objects, like bottles cast into the sea, were not meant for our eyes but for others like them. We may have intercepted a message not addressed to us. If so, what happens when you open mail not meant for you? The sender knows. The recipient is alerted, and you, the intruder, are left vulnerable. This is the fear that crept into quiet conversations among scientists. Officially, papers focused on mechanics, brightness, probabilities, but unofficially whispers circulated. Was this a signal chain? Were these objects positioned deliberately? And if so, were we now part of a conversation we should never have overheard? Patterns are dangerous because they imply intention, and intention implies intelligence. For centuries, humanity has asked if we're alone, but perhaps the better question is, have we already been noticed? The second object, smaller and quieter than 3I Atlas, still carried the same haunting echo. Together, they were no longer random. Together, they were lines in a script too large for us to read. The night sky, once thought silent, now felt alive with structure, and as telescopes continued to trace their paths, a new thought emerged. What if these were only the first strokes of a larger design? What if the true pattern was not 2 lines, but many, forming a constellation we had only begun to glimpse? The weight of that realization pressed heavily on those who studied the data. We are not prepared for the idea that the universe may already be mapped. We are not ready to accept that objects in the dark may have been placed with purpose, and yet the evidence points us there, slowly, inevitably. So the reflection deepens. If silence is safety, then repetition is warning. If one object unsettled us, and two revealed a pattern, then we must ask, how many more will come? How many lines must be drawn before we see the full shape? What do you think? Are we still mistaking coincidence for design, forcing patterns onto a canvas that cares nothing for us? Or are we at the edge of a discovery too large for us to control, the realization that we are not alone and never were? If the sky is drawing patterns before our eyes, then perhaps the next arrival will not just confirm the design. Perhaps it will complete it. When the second interstellar visitor was confirmed, it became impossible to ignore the parallels. The smaller twin moved with the same clean precision as 3I Atlas, its path echoing the first like a shadow following in silence. Together, they formed not only a coincidence but a pattern, and in patterns we find meaning. For centuries, humanity has sent messages into the unknown. We carved signals into stone, lit fires on mountain ridges, and beat drums that carried across valleys. With every advance, our reach grew longer. Radio towers sent signals into the air. Spacecraft carried plaques and golden records beyond the planets, each inscribed with signs of who we are. Always, we assumed communication was intentional. To send a message was to choose to speak. To remain silent was to choose not to. But what if not all messages are spoken? What if some are written in placement, in rhythm, in presence? A single object may be silent. Two, aligned and echoing each other, become a phrase. Astronomers began to wonder if these two visitors were not just travelers but components of something larger. Could they, together, be broadcasting a message invisible to us? A message that required both to exist in order to be understood? The idea is not new. Throughout history, humans have used pairs to transmit meaning. A single drumbeat may be ignored. Two, in sequence, can form a code. A lone torch on a hill may be mistaken for chance. Two torches, placed deliberately, become a signal. We recognize patterns not in isolation but in relation. 3I Atlas and its twin may be such a relation. Their separation in time, their near-identical speeds, their mirrored entry into the solar system. These are not random details. They are the beginnings of syntax. The thought is chilling. If these objects form part of a code, then what are they saying? And to whom? Radio astronomers searched for emissions, scanning both objects for unusual signals. None were found. But silence does not mean absence. Just as ancient beacons required a watcher stationed at the next hill to see the light, these objects may speak in ways we're not yet equipped to hear. Perhaps their message is encoded not in radio but in geometry, in the way their paths intersect, in the timing of their arrival. Geometry has always been the language of the cosmos. From the orbits of planets to the spirals of galaxies, the universe speaks in patterns. Humans too have long used geometry to communicate. The ancient Egyptians aligned pyramids with stars, the Mayans built temples that marked solstices, and across continents people drew circles and alignments that reflected the heavens above. Always, geometry was chosen for its permanence. Stone erodes, languages fade, but alignments remain. If 3I Atlas and its companion are geometric markers, then perhaps we are standing at the edge of a constellation we cannot yet see in full. 2 points define a line, 3 create a plane. With more arrivals, the shape would become clear, but even with 2, the intent begins to emerge. Imagine a traveller on a vast desert lost without direction. In the distance, 2 cairns rise from the sand. Alone, either could be meaningless. Together they form a path, a suggestion that someone has walked here before. 2 stones tell you that the place is marked, that someone cared enough to leave a sign. That is the weight these objects carry. Not just travellers, but markers. Not just accidents, but messages left in motion. Some scientists proposed another possibility: resonance. In physics, resonance occurs when 2 objects vibrate in harmony, amplifying each other. Could these interstellar visitors be resonant in some way we have yet to measure? Perhaps their combined presence, their relative positions, form a signal that only emerges when viewed together. Like 2 notes struck in sequence, they may create harmony. The search for meaning spread beyond astronomy. Anthropologists pointed to myths of paired visitors from the skies, twin stars, twin gods, twin messengers. The Sumerians told of the two who watch. Mesoamerican traditions spoke of twin stars that heralded change. Ancient cultures often understood what modern minds forget, that patterns of two carry special weight. One is random, two is intention. But perhaps the most haunting thought was this. What if these objects are not meant for us at all? What if they are part of a chain meant for others, a signal cast across the galaxy, with Earth only accidentally within view? We may be intercepting correspondence not meant for our eyes, like finding letters drifting in the current of a river. And once we have seen them, we cannot pretend ignorance. What happens when you open a message not meant for you? Sometimes nothing. But sometimes the sender learns you are listening. The silence around these objects may be deceptive. To us, they appear as dark stones against the stars. But in another frame of reference, to another observer with senses tuned differently, they may blaze with meaning. Perhaps they are active only when viewed from certain angles, or only when aligned with other distant markers. The fact that we do not see the message does not mean it is not being sent. Consider the ancient practice of geoglyphs, the vast drawings etched into the deserts of Peru. From the ground, they are scratches in the earth. From the sky, they are animals, lines, arrows pointing across the land. For centuries, people walked among them unaware of the full picture. Only from above does the message become clear. Perhaps we stand now at the same disadvantage, seeing fragments without context, unable to grasp the whole design. This realization unsettles because it reframes our place in the narrative. We are not the discoverers, but the discovered. We are not the intended readers, but accidental witnesses. And in witnessing, we reveal ourselves. History has shown us the danger of interception. During wars, coded messages fell into enemy hands. Letters meant for allies became evidence for rivals. Information, once seen, changes everything. If these interstellar objects are messages, and if we are not the intended audience, then by reading them we have stepped into a conversation we may not control. So the question becomes unavoidable. Are these two objects saying something together that one alone could not? Are they the beginning of a language too vast for us to yet understand? It is easy to dismiss such thoughts as speculation, the human mind chasing patterns. But what cannot be dismissed is the data. Two objects, near identical in behaviour, arriving in close succession, cutting across the solar system in paths that intersect not just with each other, but with us. This is not imagination, this is observation. And observations demand interpretation. Some say they are merely fragments, debris from a shattered world wandering by chance. But if so, why so clean? Why so precise? Why so consistent? Others say they are scouts, the first of many, gathering information silently before more arrive. If that is true, then we are not at the end of the story, but at its very beginning. Two objects, one message. But what does it say? That the universe is not silent, that we are not alone, that someone somewhere long ago or still today placed these travellers in motion for reasons we can only guess. The mind returns to the rhythm of their arrivals, the pulse of their presence. Perhaps the message is simple, primal, unmistakable. Perhaps the message is only this: we are here. And if that is the case, then the silence of the stars is no longer silence at all, it is waiting. So we close this chapter with a question that cannot yet be answered. Do you believe these two visitors are nothing more than coincidence, drifting rocks caught briefly in our gaze? Or do you believe they are parts of a larger whole, messages written across the night sky in geometry and time? Because if they are a message, then the story is only beginning. Two lines make a phrase. What happens when the third arrives? When the second object was confirmed and its path echoed that of Three-Eye Atlas, the conversation shifted. No longer were astronomers asking only what these travellers were. They were asking something older, deeper, more human. Have we seen them before? History, after all, is filled with records of the sky. Long before telescopes and detectors, long before data and orbital mechanics, people looked upward and made meaning. Every culture, every civilization has preserved stories of strange lights, wandering stars, visitors that came and went without explanation. Could some of these accounts be memories, fragmented poetic records of earlier encounters with what we now call interstellar objects? The Sumerians, among the first to write, described the Watchers, beings who descended from the heavens, luminous and elongated, silent in their movements. In tablets that have survived for millennia, they spoke of objects that crossed the sky in unnatural ways, neither star nor planet, moving against the expected rhythms. Some scholars interpret these as myths, metaphors for gods, but others ask, were they observations encoded in story of visitors that should not have been seen? The Egyptians too preserved tales of the Shining Ones who came not as men but as streaks of light. Temples aligned with stars bore inscriptions of eyes watching from the night, eyes that were not stars themselves but passed swiftly, briefly, then were gone. The eye was both a symbol of protection and of surveillance. An object like Three-Eye Atlas, crossing the sky with silent precision, could easily inspire such imagery. Far to the east, the Vedic texts of India speak of Vimanas, vehicles of the gods, described as radiant, elongated, sometimes cigar-shaped, sometimes moving without the smoke and fire of ordinary craft. Though often regarded as symbolic, the descriptions echo the same qualities that puzzle modern astronomers, objects that move with precision, without cometary tails, without obvious propulsion, yet defying the silence of the stars. The Americas hold their own echoes. The Maya told of twin stars that heralded change, a pair of luminous visitors whose arrival signaled the end of cycles. The Inca spoke of two wandering lights, brothers who came from the sky and vanished without returning. Even among the Hopi, stories survive of the Star People, who travelled not singly but in pairs, whose motion across the sky was interpreted as a message. Are these coincidences, or are they memories, cultural imprints of encounters that repeat across time? If interstellar visitors pass through our solar system regularly, then ancient peoples would have seen them too. Without telescopes, they could not measure their paths, but they could record their impressions. Strange lights, twin visitors, eyes that were never meant to be found. It is easy for modern minds to dismiss myth as invention, but myth often preserves what history forgets. Volcanoes became fire gods, comets became omens, eclipses became battles in the sky. Beneath the symbolism lies observation, and when we look again, with new eyes, the patterns begin to emerge. Consider the Nazca lines of Peru, vast drawings etched into the desert floor. For centuries, people walked among them unaware of their full design. Only from the air do the figures reveal themselves. Hummingbirds, monkeys, arrows pointing skyward. What if the same is true of myth? Each story alone is fragmentary, but together they may reveal a larger design. Across continents, across cultures, we hear of watchers, shining ones, twins, eyes in the sky. The details differ, but the essence is the same. Could it be that humanity has always been noticing something it was not meant to? Could it be that the appearance of Three-Eye Atlas and its companion is not the first time, but only the first time we can measure what our ancestors described in stories? The possibility is unsettling, because if the past holds echoes of the present, then we must ask what those echoes warn us of. Many myths do not describe the visitors as friendly. They are omens of change, harbingers of endings. The Sumerian watchers bring judgment. The Mayan twins mark the close of cycles. The shining eyes of Egypt are both protectors and destroyers. Perhaps these interpretations say more about human fear than cosmic intent. Yet the consistency remains. To see what should not be seen is always dangerous. To notice the hidden is always transformative. And now, in the modern age, we find ourselves repeating the same act. We have caught sight of what may not have been meant for us. We have drawn attention to ourselves by naming it, by tracking it, by announcing it across the world. The ancients might have called this hubris, the pride of the mortals daring to notice the divine. We call it science. But the outcome may be the same. If ancient civilizations saw these objects, what became of them? Did their awareness alter their course? Did they leave warnings in stone and myth, hoping their descendants would remember? And have we forgotten until now, when the pattern repeats and the visitors return? Archaeologists sometimes speak of deep time, the way certain events ripple forward for thousands of years, leaving traces in art, language and ritual. Perhaps the stories of Watchers and Twins are such ripples, faint but persistent reminders of earlier sightings. If so, then we are not the first to ask these questions. We are not the first to feel the unease of being noticed. There is an irony here. We build telescopes to pierce the darkness, to see farther, to understand more. Yet in doing so, we may only be repeating an ancient cycle, noticing what should have been left unseen, interpreting what may never have been meant for us, placing ourselves in a story older than our civilization. The thought is humbling. We like to believe we are the first, the most advanced, the only ones who have looked outward with such clarity. But perhaps we are only the latest chapter in a long repeating tale, a tale where the stars occasionally send visitors, and humanity occasionally notices, and myths are born to carry the weight of what cannot be explained. And so the echoes persist. The Watchers of Sumer, the Shining Eyes of Egypt, the Twins of the Maya, the Star Messengers of the Hopi. Different names, different symbols, yet all pointing toward the same experience. The appearance of something in the sky that was never meant to be seen, yet could not be ignored. Now, with the arrival of Three-Eye Atlas and its companion, we face the same choice our ancestors did. Do we interpret these as natural wanderers, as harmless omens? Or do we read them as messages, as warnings, as signs that the silence of the cosmos is not as complete as we once thought? What do you think? Are these stories from the past nothing more than myth, human imagination given form? Or are they fractured memories of encounters that repeat across millennia, now returning to confront us again? Because if the ancients did see what we now call interstellar objects, then we must ask the question they could not answer. What happens next? When the second traveller revealed itself, suspicion grew that we were not watching chance but choreography. Two objects, near twins in their behaviour, arriving so close in time felt less like random stones cast across a cosmic ocean, and more like deliberate placement. And with that suspicion came a darker thought. One whispered first in conference halls, then in late-night discussions among those who knew the data too well. If there are two, could there be more? History has always taught us to beware the first arrivals. When explorers of old glimpsed the first sails on the horizon, it was never just one ship. A single mast was only the vanguard of a fleet still below the curve of the Earth. When the first riders appeared on a distant ridge, armies soon followed. In every era, the initial scout was not the end but the beginning. The same pattern may be unfolding now in the heavens. Three-Eye Atlas and its companion may not be isolated wanderers, but the first signs of a procession, scouts dispatched ahead of something greater. Their silence, their precision, their mirrored motion, all suggest they are not random. And if they are scouts, then the natural question is, what follows? Astronomers, cautious as ever, began running probabilities. The number of interstellar objects passing through the solar system each year is estimated in the billions. Most are small, too faint to see, slipping past undetected. To have noticed two of such similarity in such quick succession defies odds. Unless, of course, the odds were never ours to calculate. Unless they were meant to be noticed. In that light, the pattern changes meaning. These are not accidents caught by chance, but signals chosen by design. And if signals, then perhaps they are only the first notes of a sequence we cannot yet hear in full. The fleet hypothesis, as some began to call it, is not comfortable. It suggests that we are witnessing the first stage of an arrival process, one that unfolds slowly, quietly, so subtly that only the most attentive notice until it is too late to ignore. A scout, a second scout, then more. Until what was once a silent sky becomes crowded. The analogy is unsettling. Imagine standing on the shore of an empty sea. For centuries the waves roll without interruption. Then, one morning, you see driftwood wash ashore. Curious, but harmless. Days later, another piece arrives shaped in the same way, cut by the same tools. You realize it is not driftwood at all, but debris from a ship. And if debris has arrived, then ships cannot be far behind. That is the weight of the fleet hypothesis. Skeptics, of course, resist. They argue that a fleet implies intent, technology, civilization, leaps far beyond what the data proves. Perhaps these are fragments from a single collision in deep space, broken apart long ago and drifting together by chance. But even fragments obey probability, and probability does not easily explain such symmetry. More troubling still is the scale. 3I Atlas is vast, larger than many asteroids that orbit the Sun. If such objects are scouts, then what kind of fleet requires scouts of that magnitude? What purpose demands such size, such silence, such deliberate precision? Some theorize mapping, that the objects are sentinels tasked with charting planetary systems, measuring orbits, recording conditions. In this view, they are not weapons but instruments, probes designed to move through the galaxy without revealing their origins, each one silently observing before moving on. Others whisper darker possibilities, that scouts precede colonization, that these objects are seeds, placed in advance to prepare for arrivals yet unseen. The thought conjures images of ships arriving not in centuries but already on their way, guided by the beacons left behind. Yet the silence persists. No signals, no transmissions, only presence, and presence is enough. For silence can itself be a strategy. Hunters in forests know this well. The first movement is subtle, designed not to draw attention but to test awareness, to see who notices, to measure the reaction of those who are watched. In that sense, perhaps we are the ones being measured. Our telescopes, our broadcasts, our debates may all be the very response these objects were designed to provoke. We are revealing ourselves simply by observing, and so the fleet hypothesis deepens. Not that we are waiting for an invasion, but that we are already part of an experiment, a test, a study, a survey conducted by silence. This thought is not new. Throughout human history, we have wondered if we are being observed. Ancient myths framed the Watchers as gods. Modern science frames them as extraterrestrials. The core idea remains unchanged. Someone else may be watching. The arrival of these interstellar visitors gives form to the fear, because now we have data. Now we have orbits, paths, brightness curves. The Watchers are no longer just imagined. They have names, they have designations, they cast shadows against our telescopes, and still the silence lingers. No answers, only questions. Perhaps that is the true fleet. Not ships, but questions. Each object a riddle, each path a phrase, each silence a word in a language we cannot yet read. If so, then the message is not invasion but comprehension. A test of whether we can see, whether we can notice, whether we are ready to understand. Yet history warns us again. Fleets do not announce themselves with clarity. They arrive slowly, subtly, until their presence cannot be denied. By the time the sails fill the horizon, the first ship has long been watching. That may be where we stand today. At the shore of a cosmic sea, having just glimpsed the first scouts, uncertain whether to fear, to welcome, or to deny. What do you think? Are we misinterpreting chance as design, forcing fear into silence? Or are we watching the first strokes of something larger, a fleet not yet visible but already arriving? Because if the fleet hypothesis is true, then our story is no longer about two travellers. It is about the beginning of a presence. We have always told ourselves that the universe is silent. For centuries the night sky was a canvas of stillness, the stars fixed in their constellations, the planets gliding along predictable paths. Even when comets flared and meteors burned, they were understood as rare visitors, momentary disruptions in an otherwise steady cosmos. Silence was the rule. Order was the comfort. But silence does not last forever. In just a few short years, we have seen not one, not two, but a sequence of interstellar visitors. First Oumuamua, then Borisov, then 3I Atlas, and now its companion tracing a parallel course, echoing its path. Two objects alike in their strangeness, alike in their silence, alike in their refusal to behave as simple debris. Multiplicity, the word itself carries weight. It suggests not accident but pattern, not silence but repetition. And repetition is the beginning of meaning. The weight of multiplicity is heavy because it forces us to confront what we have long resisted. That we may not be alone, that our skies may not be empty, that our role in the cosmos may not be that of the only observer. Consider what it means to witness not one improbable event but several. In probability, each unlikely occurrence compounds the unlikeliness of the whole. To see one interstellar visitor might be chance. To see two in quick succession is less so. To see two nearly identical, moving with mirrored precision, is something else entirely. It is as though the universe has begun to speak not in whispers but in phrases, and what is being said, that is the burden. Perhaps it is nothing more than the universe reminding us of its vastness, of the countless rocks and fragments that drift through interstellar space. Perhaps these visitors are no more remarkable than driftwood washing onto a shore, but driftwood carries stories. The type of wood, the cut of the grain, the marks of tools all tell of origins far beyond the beach where it arrives. Even a fragment speaks of a forest, an ocean, a journey. So too do these objects speak. Their silence is not emptiness, but information. Their presence is itself a message, that there are more, that there will be more, that the galaxy is not barren, but filled with wanderers, scouts, fragments of other stories we have not yet read. The weight comes from knowing that we are not ready. Our telescopes are few, our instruments still crude, our understanding of interstellar travel embryonic. We are children standing at the edge of an ocean, seeing waves for the first time, unaware of what lies beyond the horizon. And yet the horizon is moving toward us. Multiplicity forces a change in perspective. When there was only one, we could dismiss it. When there were two, we could debate. But when there are many, dismissal becomes denial. Multiplicity demands acknowledgement. Imagine standing in a forest. At first, you hear one twig snap in the darkness. You dismiss it as wind. Then another. Then another. Soon the pattern surrounds you, and you realize you're not alone. That is what multiplicity means in the cosmic forest. The silence is broken, and what was once hidden now presses in from all sides. Philosophers remind us that to be observed is to be changed. A tree unobserved falls in silence, but when witnessed, it enters memory, story, history. We are now observed. Whether by accident or intent, whether by fragments or fleets, we are no longer alone in our own gaze. The universe has returned the look. This realization unsettles because it challenges our narratives. We believed ourselves explorers, setting forth to map the cosmos. But what if we are the mapped? We believed ourselves discoverers, naming what we found. But what if we are the discovered named by others long before? Multiplicity suggests we're not the first to look, and not the only ones to notice. And yet, there is wonder here too. To know we are part of something larger is to feel connection. To see patterns in the stars is to sense meaning. Multiplicity is frightening, but it is also awe-inspiring, for it tells us the universe is alive with motion, alive with story, alive with visitors who, like us, move through the dark seeking understanding. Still, the weight remains. What does it mean to notice what may not have been meant for us? If 3i Atlas and its twin were never intended for our eyes, then our detection is intrusion. We have stepped into a conversation not ours, a dialogue across the galaxy in which we are uninvited listeners. What will be the consequence of our eavesdropping? History tells us that those who overhear secrets rarely remain uninvolved. To listen is to participate. To notice is to reveal oneself. Our telescopes, our measurements, our broadcasts. All of them are signals in return. We may believe we are only observing, but in truth we are already speaking back. And so multiplicity becomes more than a scientific puzzle. It becomes a philosophical burden. How should we act knowing we may have been noticed? Do we seek to understand, even at risk? Do we retreat into silence, hoping the watchers pass us by? Do we announce ourselves openly, daring to make contact? These questions carry no easy answers, but they weigh on us now more heavily than ever, because the silence of the universe is no longer silent. It has a rhythm, a pattern, a multiplicity. Perhaps the lesson is humility. For centuries we assumed we were central, that the cosmos revolved around us. Then we learned we orbit a star among billions, in a galaxy among trillions. Now we learn that we're not even unique in being observers. Others may have come before, others may be here now, others may be arriving still. Multiplicity humbles because it reminds us that discovery is not ownership. To see is not to possess. To notice is not to control. We are part of a larger pattern, and our role may be smaller than we wish to believe. And yet, there is beauty in this smallness. To be part of something vast is to belong. To glimpse the greater story is to know we are not alone in it. Multiplicity frightens, but it also comforts, for it means the universe is not empty. The final reflection lingers. If Three-Eye Atlas was never meant to be found, and if its twin was also discovered against all odds, then what does it mean that we have seen them both? Perhaps it means nothing. Perhaps it means everything. Perhaps it means only this, that the time of silence is ending and the time of awareness has begun. So I ask you, listening now across time zones and continents, under the same sky, what do you believe? Are these visitors chance, or are they signs? Are they debris, or are they messages? Are they the first of many, the scouts of a fleet already en route? Because if multiplicity is real, then the story is not about one object or two or even four. The story is about the countless others we have not yet seen, moving silently in the dark, waiting to be noticed. And if we are noticing now, then perhaps the Watchers have noticed us in return. The first was a whisper, the second an echo. But echoes never come alone. They multiply, they spread, they repeat until the silence itself becomes chorus. And now we must decide, do we listen with fear or with wonder? Because the echoes are already here, and more are coming.